My name is Edmund Voss. I am 57 years old, and for 6 years I paid the mortgage on a house I was never truly welcome in. Father's Day, I was in my garage sorting a bin of copper fittings that did not need sorting. I've been a plumbing contractor for 31 years. I know what to do with my hands when I don't know what to do with anything else. Joan used to stand in the doorway with a glass of iced tea and tell me the garage was where I went to think, without calling it thinking. She was right about most things. She's been gone 4 years, and I still reach for the garage door handle when life gets too loud. I had 2 wrapped packages on the workbench beside me. A model rocket kit for Max, the kind with the actual launch pad and the little altitude tracker. A craft jewelry set for Grace, because she'd told me 2 weeks before that she wanted to make bracelets for everyone in the family. I had asked her if I was in everyone. She said, "Of course, Grandpa." I drove 40 minutes to the hobby store for those packages. At 1:47 in the afternoon, I opened Facebook to look at pictures of my grandkids. That was the only reason I had the app. My nephew had set it up for me 3 years ago, and I hadn't changed a single setting since. The photo loaded slow on the garage Wi-Fi. Long table at the Birchwood, the renovated farmhouse out on County Road 14 that does Sunday brunch with the $38 fixed menu and the mason jar mimosas. Linen tablecloths, Edison bulbs on Edison bulbs. My daughter Allison on the left, her husband Spencer beside her. Max, 9 years old, hair combed flat. Grace, 6, sitting on Spencer's mother's lap, and Shirley Holt in the center seat, wearing a button on her blouse the size of a small clock face, white background, red letters, "World's Best Grandma." The caption said, "For the dads and grandpas who show up for us every single day." I counted the people at the table, 9. Then I counted the chairs, including the 2 half hidden by the tablecloth overhang. 9 chairs, 9 people, not one empty. That's when I stopped calling it an oversight. Someone had called that restaurant. Someone had given a number to a hostess. The number had not included me. I set the phone face down on the workbench. I looked at the 2 packages for a long time, then I opened my banking app. 4 scheduled transfers on that screen. I had not looked at this section in months, because there's never a reason to look at something that runs itself. $850 a month to Allison and Spencer's joint checking account. Memo line, mortgage assist. I had set that up in March of 2021 when Spencer's company did layoffs and they were 3 weeks from falling behind. He found a new position 6 months later. The $850 never got revisited. $475 a month toward the auto loan on Allison's SUV. I had co-signed because her credit was thin after the hospital bills from Max's birth. That was 4 years ago. I had been making the payment directly to the lender every month since. $600 a month toward a home equity line they opened when Grace was born, and they needed to add a bedroom. 14 payments left on it. Fit $200 a month into a $529 college savings plan for Max and Grace. I had opened that account the week Max was born. My name on it, their names as beneficiaries. $3,125 every month. Some of it for 4 years, some of it for 6. I did the arithmetic on the back of a hardware store receipt. Not because I needed to. Because I needed to see the number in my own handwriting. $240,000, roughly. And I had never once mentioned any of it to anyone. Not at Christmas. Not at Grace's birthday party. Not when Spencer made a joke at a cookout about plumbers charging too much. I never said a word. I put my thumb over the word cancel, next to the first line. I could feel my own pulse in it. I didn't press it. I needed to know one more thing first. I drove to their house on Tuesday with both packages still in the back seat. Texted that I was coming. Got back a thumbs up emoji, which is what Allison sends now instead of words. Spencer answered the door and said Allison had stepped out and the kids were in the back. He said it pleasantly, the way a man does when he's decided the weather between, "You will be fair regardless of what's actually in the sky." I told him I'd brought things for the kids. He let me in. Their entryway has a gallery wall. Allison had spent a whole weekend arranging it the year they moved in. I helped her hang the frames. I still have the stud finder that found those studs. Standing in that hallway, I realized I hadn't actually looked at it in over a year. We usually talk near the front door or in the driveway, and I hadn't been inside since Thanksgiving. I looked for the photo of me walking Allison up the aisle at St. Andrew's. Her hands had been wrapped around my forearm because she was nervous about the heel of her shoe catching on the runner. That photo was gone. In its place, a professionally shot image of just Allison and Spencer under the arch. No guests visible. I looked for the one of me holding Max in the recovery room, both of us red-faced, him from being born, and me from trying not to cry in front of the nurses. Gone. 3 new frames. Shirley and Max at a soccer game. Shirley and Grace at a dance recital. Shirley and both kids at a pumpkin patch I didn't recognize. All 3 were new enough that the frames still had a faint showroom smell. I didn't say anything. Max came running down the hall in his socks and slid the last few feet the way he always does. He stopped when he saw me, a little surprised, the way a kid looks when an adult shows up slightly out of sequence. "Hey," he said. He used to say Grandpa. Not hey, Grandpa. I crouched down, which my knees have strong opinions about. "You don't call me Grandpa anymore." He shrugged in the particular way of a 9-year-old who has been told something is settled. "Mom says Grandma means Grandma Shirley." A pause. "And Grandpa means Grandpa Perry. You're Grandpa Ed." "When did that start?" "I don't know. A while ago." Grace came around the corner dragging a stuffed elephant by one ear, and her whole face went up when she saw me. "Papa." Max said quickly, not unkindly. "He's Grandpa Ed, Grace, remember?" Grace stopped. She looked at her brother. Then she looked at me, waiting for one of us to tell her which one was right. I have thought about that half-second more times than I know how to count. I crouched lower, my knees making their opinions known. "You call me whatever feels right to you," I said. "But I want you to know who I am." She leaned into my shoulder and said, "Okay, Papa Ed," like she was splitting the difference, because she is 6 and 6-year-olds are better diplomats than most adults. I put my hand on top of her head for a moment. Then Max was already sitting on the floor with the rocket kit, asking if the altitude tracker needed batteries, and Grace had found the jewelry set and was counting out beads by color. I watched them for a while. Then I got back in my truck and sat in their driveway for 10 minutes. I drove to my sister Ruth's house. Ruth lives 15 minutes from me in a raised ranch with a screen door that hasn't latched properly since 2015. I avoid her sometimes because she says the true thing. Whatever the true thing is, she finds it and she says it out loud, and then you have to live in a world where it has been said. Joan loved her for it. I have spent years learning to appreciate it. She poured coffee and I told her about the photo, flat, the way I'd describe a bad pipe junction to an apprentice. 9 chairs, the button, the caption. She didn't say, "Oh, Edmund," she didn't reach across the table. "You weren't forgotten," she said. "You were planned around." I started to say that was a strong way to put it. She got up, went to the counter, and came back with something, a folded piece of glossy paper. Spencer Holt for City Council. Accountability, community, integrity, and filling the bottom third of the flyer. Spencer and Allison and both kids on the front porch steps of Shirley's house. Shirley standing beside them, her hand on Max's shoulder. "Where did you get that?" "It's been at the post office, the library, my mailbox, about a month now, Edmund." I looked at Grace's dress in the photo. Navy blue with the white collar. She'd worn it to her kindergarten winter concert. I had been at that concert, 4th row. I had recorded the whole thing on my phone. "This was taken in February," I said. "March at the latest," Ruth said. 4 months before that brunch. She wrapped both hands around her mug. The Father's Day photo wasn't the decision. It was the announcement. She let that sit a moment. "Here's my question. If they finished replacing you in February, why were they still cashing your checks in June?" "My accountant is a man named Bert Hadley. He is 63, keeps my books in a wire-bound ledger, and charges me in smoked fish every October. That Thursday, he had my account spread across my kitchen table, glasses on his nose, the kind of silence around him that good listeners carry. "Do you know what you send out of here every year?" he asked. "I know what I send every month." "That's not the same question." He turned the ledger around. He had added the personal draws column and circled the total twice. 37,500. That's this year's pace. He set the pen down. 6 years of the mortgage, 4 on the car loan, the 529 since Max was born. He took the glasses off. "Edmund, your retirement should be further along than it is, you know that." I did know that. I had pushed it back twice, once when they opened the home equity line and once when I co-signed the SUV. I had never told anyone that, not even Ruth, because both times I had decided it was a choice I was making freely, and a man doesn't ask to be thanked for his own choices. "What are you going to do?" Bert asked. I told him I didn't know yet. That was the first deliberate lie I had told in a long time. He let me have it. Bert is good at knowing when to let a man have something. That Saturday evening, I called Allison. 5 rings. When she answered, there was restaurant noise behind her. A Friday night crowd, overlapping voices, somebody laughing hard at something near the host stand. Hey, Dad, everything okay? I didn't mention the photograph. I had it in my head in 100 different versions, and I didn't use a single one. I was thinking I'd come for dinner this week. See the kids. A pause with a great deal inside it. This week's pretty packed, she said. And you know how Spencer is about weeknight things when he's got an early morning. It'd be just you and the kids, Dad, and they've got school the next day. I switched the phone to my other ear. Allison, what does Max call me now? The restaurant kept going behind her. 3 seconds of it. A glass went down on a hard surface somewhere nearby. Don't make this into a thing, she said. I'm asking a question. I've got to go. They're calling our table. She hung up first. I stood in my kitchen with the phone, still against my ear for a moment, the way you do when you're not quite ready to lower it. She hadn't said, "What do you mean?" She hadn't said, "He calls you Grandpa. What are you talking about?" She had said, "Don't make this into a thing. You only push back against a question you already know the answer to." My daughter had known. Whenever it started, she had known. I opened the banking app. The only light on was the one over the stove. I sat at the kitchen table, where Joan and I used to pay bills together on Sunday nights for 30 years, and I did it in order, top to bottom, the way you work through a problem panel. Transfer 1, mortgage assist $850. The app asked if I was sure. I pressed confirm. Transfer 2, auto loan $475. I called the lender directly Monday morning, because the loan was in both our names, and I removed the automatic draw. The woman on the phone read me a confirmation number and said a notice would be mailed to both addresses on file. I said, "Please do." Transfer 3, home equity line $600. Same call, same confirmation number, same notice in the mail. Transfer 4, I did not cancel. I want to be careful here because this is the part people tend to get wrong about me. That money was for Max and Grace. It had never been for their parents. So on Wednesday morning, I drove 40 minutes to my credit union in Millbrook and moved the entire balance of that $529, $67,400 into a new custodial account with my name as sole custodian and both grandchildren as the beneficiaries. Same kids, same monthly deposit, different lock on the door. Then I sat in the credit union parking lot and wrote a letter on a yellow legal pad, and I mailed it because a letter takes 2 days to arrive and cannot be deleted at a red light. 3 lines. The mortgage payment, the car loan, and the home equity draw had ended. The education account was safe, growing, and both children were still the full beneficiaries. I would provide account statements to Allison upon request. And one last line. I am still their grandfather. I have just stopped being your bank. The letter arrived Thursday. Nobody called me for 19 days. Those 19 days were the best I had felt in longer than I could attach a year to. I took a commercial job I had been turning down for 2 months. A full bathroom retrofit on a medical office building, steady work, both hands busy all day. I cleaned out Joan's studio in the spare room, not to erase it, just to open the window and let some light in. I kept her drafting table and her pencil jar exactly where she had left them. I just took the drop cloth off the window. I cooked real dinners 3 or 4 nights a week. I had not done that consistently since the first year after she died. Ruth called twice. My neighbor Dawn dragged me out to the reservoir one Saturday afternoon, and we sat in lawn chairs and caught nothing, and it was genuinely completely fine. Every evening around 8:30 I checked my phone. Nothing from Allison, nothing from Spencer, not a call, not a text, not a thumbs up emoji, not one word. I told myself that was information, not injury. I told myself that every morning, and I believed it most mornings. On day 19, I made the mistake of opening Facebook again. Allison had posted a story. Handheld video, her voice bright and slightly breathless. She was standing in a commercial space I didn't recognize. Exposed brick, tall windows, twice the square footage of her current home office setup. "Big things coming," she said to the camera. "Watch this space." She had signed a lease on a bigger space in the same month, the $850 that had been covering. The old expenses had already stopped. The first of the month was 12 days out. Nobody at that address had read my letter, or if they had, nobody had believed it. I went to work the next morning the same as always. I was on site at the medical office building at 8:20, when my phone buzzed in my chest pocket. Allison, first contact in 19 days. Dad, I think there's a bank error. The mortgage payment didn't post. Can you check your end? I read it twice, put the phone away, finished the run I was on. There is a certain kind of peace in a job that requires both hands. At 11, a missed call. At 11:18, another one. At 12:40, a text from Spencer, long one. He used the word miscommunication twice, the phrase circle back once, and signed it with just his initial, like a man sending a memo to a vendor. I called at 5:30 after I had washed up and changed. Allison answered before the first ring finished. Dad, thank God. So the mortgage. There's no bank error, I said. I stopped it. I'm allowed to stop it. The sound she made I had heard once before in my life, the night Joan died. Dad, we have a lease now. We have payments. I know. You didn't even tell me you were going to do this. I mailed you a letter 20 days ago. Then Spencer's voice, moving close to the phone, very measured. Edmund, hey, let's all take a breath here. I hear you. I want you to know we hear you. A pause. And then in the exact tone a man uses when he believes he holds leverage. So how long are you planning to keep this up? Not why, not what did we do, how long? He thought I was negotiating. He thought I was a position to be managed. Spencer, I said, the kid's education account hasn't stopped. It never stopped. It's in a custodial 529 at Millbrook Credit Union. Both of them are on it, and I'm still putting $2,200 a month in. Silence. Balance as of Wednesday was $68,600. In 2023, you and Allison withdrew $7,500 from the old account. I watched it happen and didn't say one word. I'm telling you now why the account moved. Allison got the phone back. She was crying, the real kind, not the kind that arrives on a schedule. Dad, please, don't do this to the kids. I didn't do anything to the kids, I said. I stopped the adults from spending the kids' money. She hung up. I stood in my kitchen, and my hands were not quite steady, and I want to be honest about that. Doing the right thing did not feel righteous or satisfying. It felt done. Which was the point. Shirley Holt called me on a Tuesday. First time since Joan's funeral. I had her in my phone because Allison had put her there years ago. Neither of us had ever used it. She didn't mention money. Not once the entire call. She talked about family for a while, about how these things happen in every family, and how what matters most is that the children see the adults conduct themselves well. She said the word grace. She said the phrase for everyone's sake. And then, warmly, effortlessly, Perry and I are hosting a big birthday cookout for him on the 14th at the house. 60 people. Nothing too formal. We would just love for you to be there, Edmund. Your family. Family. She said it like she meant it. That's what makes people like Shirley effective. She is never unkind out loud, and I have watched her rearrange that entire family around a seating chart without once raising her voice. I'd be glad to come, I said. Oh, wonderful. Real relief in it, and it wasn't about me. I hung up and I sat with what that invitation actually was. She hadn't called to make peace. She had called because in 3 weeks there would be 60 people in a backyard, and a man who doesn't answer his phone will answer a question in front of 60 people. She was setting a table again. She just didn't know I had my own reason to sit at it. Perry Holt showed up at my garage on a Wednesday morning with 2 coffees and no appointment. Spencer's father. I had spoken to him maybe 15 times in 12 years, usually across a holiday table, never longer than a weather report. He set 1 cup on my workbench and stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets, like a man who has rehearsed something and is not sure where to start. I want to ask you something, and I'd like a straight answer. All right. Father's Day, why weren't you there? I looked at him. I wasn't invited. He didn't move for a moment. Then he set his own cup down very carefully on the edge of the bench. That's not what I was told. What were you told? That you don't enjoy large groups, that Allison had checked with you. He rubbed the back of his neck. She said it in the car on the way to the restaurant, Perry, more than once. I pulled out my phone. I opened my messages with Allison and turned the screen around and let him scroll. Father's Day this year. Nothing. Father's Day the year before. 1 text in early May about something unrelated. The photo of the restaurant. 9 chairs, 9 people, the grandma button. He handed the phone back and sat down on the customer stool and was quiet for a long time. The button, he said finally. Shirley's best grandma button. I had never seen that in my life before that morning. She had it in her purse at the table, pulled it out and put it on in front of everybody. I didn't say anything. I've got 3 grandchildren on my side, he said. Not one of them ever had to choose. They just got 2 grandfathers. He stood up and tossed his cup in the trash can by the door. He stopped on the way out. Come to the party, sit down, I'll handle where people go. He didn't apologize for what his ex-wife had arranged. It wasn't his to apologize for. He had been handed a situation the same as I had, and he was doing what he could with what was his to do. I respected that more than I knew how to say in that moment. The first of the month came. The mortgage payment didn't post. The auto loan servicer sent a delinquency notice to both addresses because my name was still on the account. Spencer's application for a small business line of credit. He was co-signed on the flower space with Allison. Came back flagged because the auto loan showed past due. That one I hadn't planned. I found out about it the same way I find out about everything in a town this size. Through Ruth, who heard it from her friend who works at the county assessor's office. Allison came to my garage on a Friday afternoon. She was crying before the door finished closing. I got her the good chair from the corner and the box of tissues from the shelf, and I sat on my stool and let her talk for 12 minutes without saying one word. She talked about Shirley, and how Shirley manages every gathering and every holiday, and how there is a group text she is on, and a group text she isn't allowed in, about how Spencer handles the money, and she has to ask permission for anything over $300, about how tired she is of never making a real decision about her own life. Some of it was true, I could hear which parts. When she was done, I handed her another tissue. One question, I said. Then I'll do whatever you want. She looked up. Who taught the kids to use different names for me? Her face did something I hadn't seen since she was 16, and I found the car keys she swore were lost. That doesn't matter right now, Dad. It's the only thing that matters. I set my phone on the workbench between us. You tell me who, and I'll turn all 3 back on tonight. Right now, from this phone, I don't bluff. You've always known I don't bluff. The compressor at the back of the garage kicked on. It runs about 90 seconds. She looked at the phone the entire time. She didn't say Shirley. She could have. It would have been easy, and I might have half believed it. She didn't say anything at all. And that's how I found out. Sitting on a stool in my own garage with my hands on my knees, listening to a compressor run itself out. Okay, I said quietly. I gave you a real chance. You just turned it down. She stood to go. At the door, she turned around and said the thing that changed how I understood the entire 6 years. You never asked either, Dad. Not once. You never asked why your name wasn't on the invitation. You never asked why the kids started calling you something different. You never asked why you weren't in a single photo from last Christmas. She had her hand on the frame. Do you know what that looks like? It looks like you didn't care enough to find out. Then she left. The garage was quiet. I would like to tell you I dismissed it. I can't, because she wasn't entirely wrong. 6 years. Every missed holiday. Every birthday I found out about after the fact. Every photograph I wasn't in. I had never asked about a single one. I had decided every time that asking would make me a burden, and being a burden was the one thing I would not allow myself to be. Joan used to ask for me. She'd say, Edmund wants to know what we're doing for Thanksgiving, and Alan would answer her, and I would get to stay quiet and still have a chair. Joan had been doing that for 30 years so naturally that I had never noticed it was a thing that needed doing. She was gone, and I had no idea I had also lost the person who kept my name in the room. I got out the notepad I keep on the pegboard above the workbench, the one I use for measurements and supplier phone numbers. I turned to a clean page and I started writing down what I would say if I ever got to say it. I crossed it out. I wrote it again. It took me 4 days to get it to the version I could say, without my voice going somewhere I didn't want it to go. 4 sentences, that's what I could hold. The cookout was on a Saturday, 60 people in Perry's backyard, string lights through the oak trees, a rented tent over the food tables. Perry had told me to come to the back gate at 6 and he'd walk me in. He was there, and he walked me across that entire yard in front of everybody and sat me in the chair directly to his left. I could feel the party adjust the way a room does when an equation changes. Shirley was at the far end of the food table, with a clipboard and a laminated seating chart. I watched her look at the chart, look at me, look at her ex-husband. She set the chart face down on the tablecloth. She didn't say a word. Spencer was near the drink table with 2 men in quarter-zip pullovers, who had the posture of people who write checks to local campaigns. He hadn't seen me yet. Allison had. She had gone very still near the tent post. Max came ducking under someone's elbow at a dead run and slid the last few feet on the grass. "Grandpa Ed, how come you get the good seat?" 6 or 7 people nearby heard it. A small ripple moved through the cluster closest to us. Perry answered before I could, and he didn't lower his voice. "Because that's your grandfather's seat, Max. He gets the good chair." Max frowned, working it out, "But Grandpa Perry is." "I'm your grandpa on your dad's side. He's your grandpa on your mom's side." Perry put his hand flat on the back of my chair. "You've got 2. That's not a problem. That's just more people on your team." Max took about 2 seconds with that, said okay in the tone of someone who has actually processed a thing rather than just accepted it, and went to find Grace. When dinner settled and the plates came around, Spencer stood with his glass. He had the easy confidence of a man who has had 2 drinks and a good conversation with the right people. "I just want to say something quick," he said. The table went attentive. To Perry, happy birthday. 30 years until 60. Laughter in the right places, he let it settle. But really, what I keep coming back to is, family isn't about obligation. It isn't what somebody does for you on a spreadsheet somewhere. He let that breathe for a moment. It's about who shows up, who's in the room when it matters. Some applause. Polite, genuine. It moved around the table and through the near guests. And then it reached a patch where no one was clapping and it stopped there. Allison was looking at her plate. Perry was looking at me. I want to tell you exactly what I felt in that moment, because I have had months to sort through it, and it was not anger, it was relief. Because Spencer had just stood up in front of 60 people. 2 potential campaign contributors, the parents of half the kids in Max's class, 3 members of the school board, and he had put the one subject he could not afford to have examined directly on the table himself. I folded my napkin and set it beside my plate. I stood up. "Spencer, can I borrow that for a second?" He smiled the smile of a man who cannot say no in front of an audience and extended his glass toward me. I set it on the tablecloth and held out my hand. He gave me the glass. Then I set that down too, and reached for the small wireless microphone the caterer had left, clipped to the table for toasts. The mic gave a brief squeal when I took it. Somebody near the back said, "Whoa." Then the yard went quiet, in that particular way, that tells you a room knows something is about to happen. I didn't take the notepad from my pocket. I'd read the 4 sentences enough times. "My name is Edmund Voss," my voice held. "I'm Allison's father, and I'm Max and Grace's grandfather." A chair creaked somewhere in the back. Nobody else moved. Spencer's right. Family is who shows up. I've been showing up for 6 years. I turned slightly so I wasn't talking directly at him. For 6 years, I covered part of the mortgage payment on their house every month. I've been paying the auto loan on my daughter's SUV since she bought it 4 years ago, because her credit was thin. I covered the home equity payments when they needed the extra room after Grace was born. And I put $200 a month into a college savings account for both of my grandchildren. I did not say the total. I had it written in my pocket. I left it there. Last month I stopped 3 of those 4. The 4th is still running because that money belongs to the kids, not the adults, and it always will. I looked at Perry. I wasn't invited to Father's Day. I didn't come here tonight to embarrass anyone about that. I came because Perry Holt gave me a seat at his table, and I've learned this year that a seat matters more than I ever let myself believe. I set the mic down on the tablecloth. "Thank you, Perry." I sat down. 4 seconds. I counted, because counting is what I do instead of feeling things in public. Then a man I didn't recognize at the far end of the table, I found out later he was the principal at Max's school, began to clap. Not quickly, not with performance, just steady. The woman across from me joined him. Then the side table by the tent, then most of the yard. Not a standing ovation, not wild. Something quieter than that. And for the people it was directed at, much worse. The sound of 60 people arriving at the same conclusion at the same time. Shirley did not clap. She was looking at the laminated seating chart face down beside her plate. Spencer went out through the kitchen door of the house. Allison stayed in her chair. I left before the birthday cake. I had said what I came to say, and I am not built for the hour after a thing like that. She caught me at my truck in the side driveway. "You humiliated me in front of everyone I know." No tears. That's how I knew we were finally having the real conversation. I said my name and I said what's true. If the true part is humiliating, Allison, that's not something I did to you. She stood there in the driveway with her arms wrapped around herself. Then, I taught them. Her voice had changed. Something had gone out of it. The names. It was me. Shirley kept correcting the kids at her dinners, and Max would look at me, and it was just easier to teach them at home than to fight about it every single Sunday. I know. You don't know what it's like in that family. Then tell me. And she did. Some of it. About the group texts and the holiday schedules. About the $300 rule. About a night last spring when Spencer had told her that if she couldn't get with the program, they should look at the whole arrangement. And then, because he is careful, he had mentioned that his cousin handles family law in Columbus. She was 24 when she married him. I walked her up that aisle. I thought he was a serious young man. Are we going to be okay, Dad? I looked at her for a long time. No, I said. Not yet, she flinched. I let her. I'm not angry that you were scared. I'm sad that you let me pay for it. I got an envelope off the dash. I had kept it there for 3 days. Inside was one page. The custodial account number, both kids' names and birth dates, the current balance, and the direct number to the credit union. You can call them anytime, and they'll read you the balance. You don't need my permission for anything on that page. She held it with both hands. Perry called me 12 days later. He sounded like a man who hadn't slept. We had a fight, Edmund. Shirley and me. Biggest one since we were married, and we've been divorced for 12 years. A long breath. She withdrew from the neighborhood association board she's chaired for 6 years. Nobody asked her to. 2 of the women called her Sunday. She called it checking in. She stepped down Monday morning. Another pause. In a town this size, someone checking in is the whole penalty. I sat down on my back steps. I asked her to apologize to you, he said. She won't. I want you to know, I asked. He cleared his throat. She genuinely believes she was protecting her family. Once she decided that, you became a logistics problem. She can't apologize because she still doesn't think she did anything wrong to a person. She thinks she managed a situation. A screen door banged on his end somewhere. I can't fix my Lord knows I tried long enough. But I can fix where people sit when I'm the one with the table. He asked if I wanted to go fishing the following Saturday. He has a boat he uses twice a year and says it's a waste. I told him I'd bring the coffee. That is how I ended up with a friend at 57, which should not been on my schedule. Allison brought the kids to the garage on a Thursday in September. She parked out front, walked them to the door, and went back to wait in the car. I understood that. Some rooms you can't be in yet. Grace went straight for the bin of brass fittings she had catalogued on a previous visit. She is 6. She has a color and size system. It is sound. Max stood in the middle of the garage with his hands in his hoodie pocket, the posture of a 9-year-old who has come to settle something. Are you actually my grandpa? I am. How do I know? Fair question. Best one anyone had asked in over a year. I went to my workbench and opened the flat drawer below the surface where I keep documents I can't quite file away. I pulled out a piece of hospital notepaper, folded soft at the corners from handling. I laid it on the bench and turned it around, my handwriting, blue ink, a little shaky from that particular morning. September 4, 7:22 a.m. Maxwell James Holt, 8 pounds 1 oz 21 inches. That's the morning you were born, I said. I wrote it down in the waiting room because your mom asked me to. She wanted someone to remember the exact time. He read it twice. He is a careful reader. He put one finger on the 7:22. You were there? I was the 3rd person to hold you. Your mom first, your dad second, then me. That's the right order. He looked at the paper a long time. Then he looked at me. Okay, he said. And then after I paused, that actual thought in it. Okay, Grandpa? First time in over a year. I did not make a production of it. You want to see how the pressure relief valve on this works? He said, yeah. We spent the next hour on it. Grace climbed into my lap at some point with a fistful of sorted fittings and no awareness whatsoever that anything had just happened. Which is exactly how it should have been for a 6-year-old with a system. Out in the car, Allison had her hand over her mouth. She came inside when she came back for them. She stood near the workbench with her keys. Are you going to turn any of it back on? I had the answer written on an index card in my shirt pocket, because I write things down now instead of assuming I'll remember them later. I read it to her. The education account stays in my name. I keep funding it every month. You can see the balance anytime you ask. No permission needed, no request process. I looked at the card. I take the kids every Wednesday, not when it's convenient, every Wednesday. I kept reading. My name goes on the list for any family event, before the invitation is made, not after the fact, before. I don't find out on Facebook that I wasn't invited. I looked up from the card, and I don't lend money. Not to you, not to Spencer, not for an emergency, not ever again. If you're in real trouble, you come here and we figure out what to do together. But the bank is closed. She was quiet for a moment, reading the card herself after I lowered it. That's fair, she said. It's not generous, it's just true. I spent 6 years getting those two things confused. She put the card in her coat pocket. A moment passed. I've been seeing someone, she said. A counselor. In Millbrook, so nobody from around here recognizes my car. Does Spencer know? No. I didn't ask more than that. There are doors you let a person walk through at their own speed. Are we going to be okay someday, Dad? I thought about that honestly, because she deserved honest. I don't know, I said, but we're starting from the right place now. We've never done that before. She got the kids bundled into their coats and out to the car. Grace waved from the back window the whole length of the block. A year does quiet work if you let it. I sold a third of the business to a plumber named Dex Hara, 31, who came up through the trade school program at the community college, and who reads a set of blueprints faster than I did at his age. He runs the daily operations now. I take the jobs I want and I go fishing on Saturdays with Perry, which I had not done with anyone since Joan. Wednesday nights, Max and Grace are at my house. We do homework at the kitchen table where I used to balance accounts alone. Then we go out to the garage. Last month, I taught Max to solder a copper joint. Real torch, real pipe, the actual method, and he got the fit clean on his third try. He held it up and turned it under the work light and looked at me with his whole face open. He calls me Grandpa. He has never once mentioned that he ever called me anything else. Nora corrects people about it. I find this completely acceptable. Allison and Spencer separated in the spring. I will not say more about that than this. It was not my doing. I never said one word to my daughter about her marriage, before or after, and I am not going to start now. What happened is that she learned to say no, and it turned out the whole arrangement had been built in such a way that no was load-bearing. Father's Day came around again. I was in the garage. I want to be honest about that because I think people expect the man at the end of a story like this to have been transformed. I hadn't been. Not completely. It was Sunday morning, and I didn't know what else to do with myself, so I unlocked the door and started going through a box of old fittings that did not need going through. Some habits take longer to replace than others. At 10:45, my phone rang. Max. Video call. His face enormous and slightly blurred, holding the phone too close the way kids do. Grandpa, are you coming? We've been waiting. Grace keeps asking. I could hear Ruth's voice in the background telling someone to move something, and Grace shrieking about something else, in the particular register of a 7-year-old who has been waiting too long. I was 11 minutes away. I made it in 8. 6 of us at Allison's dining table. Allison, Max, Grace, Ruth, Perry, who had been invited because he earned his own invitation by now, and me. There was a card at my place. Construction paper, cut with safety scissors, crayon pressed hard all the way to the edges. Grandpa Edmund. The U was missing. Max told me Grace had insisted on spelling it herself, and he had let her do the whole thing. Nobody took a photograph. At one point, Allison reached for her phone on reflex, and then set it face down on the sideboard and said, "No, let's just eat." My chair was at the end of the table nearest the kitchen door. It's where I like to sit, and always have, because from there I can get up to refill everyone's water, without making anyone move their chair. Joan used to sit there. I watched her do it 1,000 times over 30 years without ever thinking about why it felt right. The seat by the door. The one nobody wants. But there was a card on it with my name on it, and the name was right, and someone had put it there before I walked in. I've thought about the difference between that table and the one in the Father's Day photograph for the better part of a year now. It isn't the restaurant or the number of people or the tablecloths. It's that someone counted, and when they counted, my name was already in the number before the reservation was made. Here's what I know now that I didn't know 6 years ago. People don't need to be in the center seat. Most of us don't even want to be there. All that most of us need is to know that there is a place, and that somebody put our name on it before we walk through the door. And if nobody's doing that, you are allowed to stop clearing the table for the people who aren't. That's the whole of it. I learned it at 57. I'm not sorry it took that long, and I'm not sorry I learned it.